Scotland, and hill snow above around 200 metres in any showers that follow for Scotland and northern England. But some clearer and drier weather for the second half of Tuesday for the southern half of the UK. Then yet more rain arrives to the west on Tuesday night, some heavy rain at times, along with a brisk wind. This isn't the stormy weather. I think that's to come on Wednesday night and also on Friday. So stay tuned to the forecast this week because there could be some impacts from that.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to The Briefing with me, Gloria De Piero. Today on the show, the Prime Minister has been in Scotland. We'll bring you the latest on that. We speak to the son of a victim of the post office scandal, and we get the latest on Russian and Ukraine tensions. First, it's the news with Rosie.
Good afternoon. It is just coming up to 3 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Now, the Prime Minister has warned the situation in Ukraine is very, very dangerous. Boris Johnson is urging the Russian president to step back from the edge of a precipice amid fears that Vladimir Putin plans to invade Ukraine. Earlier, the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss chaired a Cobra meeting to discuss the UK's position. The Prime Minister, who's in Scotland, will chair another meeting tomorrow.
Realise that this is a very, very dangerous, difficult situation. We are on the edge of a precipice, but there is still time for President Putin to step back. And what we're urging is for everybody to engage in dialogue, for a conversation to take place, and for the Russians to avoid what I think everybody, certainly everybody in the UK, can see would be a disastrous mistake, disastrous for Russia.
A police manhunt is underway to try to find a convicted sex offender who absconded from an open prison in Lincolnshire over the weekend. Police say Paul Robson, who's currently serving a life sentence for attempted rape and indecent assault, presents a danger to women and young children. The 56-year-old was reported missing at around 7 o'clock yesterday morning. Lincolnshire police are urging anyone with information or confirmed sightings to call 999. At least 7 people, including 2 children, have been killed in an explosion in southwest France. The country's Interior Minister, Gérald Darmanin, called the incident a tragedy on the visit to the site in the Pyrenees region, and he thanked emergency services for their rapid action. An investigation is currently underway. A public inquiry into the wrongful conviction of sub-postmasters and mistresses of theft, fraud and false accounting is hearing evidence today. Over 700 former employees were impacted because of a flawed accounting computer system that post office branches used called Horizon. Well, the inquiry is going to look at whether the post office knew about the IT issues and its handling of them. The Duchess of Cornwall is currently self-isolating, having tested positive for coronavirus. Clarence House made the announcement this afternoon. It's the first time Camilla has had the infection, catching it just days after the Prince of Wales tested positive for the second time last week. A spokesperson has confirmed Her Royal Highness is triple vaccinated. The Labour Party leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says he received death threats after the Prime Minister claimed he failed to prosecute the paedophile Jimmy Savile. Speaking to BBC Radio Newcastle, Sir Keir said Boris Johnson's comments were wrong and that they fed into a right-wing conspiracy theory. The Met Police launched an investigation into online threats against the Labour leader following Mr Johnson's comments in the House of Commons. Downing Street says the Prime Minister condemns the death threats. A Russian figure skater who failed a drugs test at the Winter Olympics in Beijing can continue to compete at the event. 15-year-old Kamila Valieva faced the prospect of becoming the youngest athlete to be banned for doping during the Olympic Games. But a court of arbitration says the teenager's case is an exceptional circumstance and no provisional suspension should be imposed. Unvaccinated teenagers can now travel to Spain as long as they have a negative PCR test. The country has reversed its policy demanding UK visitors aged between 12 and 17 be double jabbed. The change coincides with the start of half-term, which for many in the UK begins today. But travel expert Simon Calder told GB News the timing is terrible. A new cervical screening campaign is urging anyone eligible in England between the ages of 25 and 64 to go for an appointment. Data shows 1 in 3 don't take up the offer of being tested, with research suggesting embarrassment is the most common reason to miss one. The new campaign's aiming to raise awareness. Screening is estimated to prevent 70% of cervical cancer deaths. That number could be as high as 83% if everyone actually attended their appointment. Colleen Rooney has lost her bid to include a claim against Rebecca Vardy's agent, Caroline Watts, in a libel case. The wife of the former England footballer, Wayne Rooney, accuses Miss Vardy and her agent of leaking stories about her private life to the Sun newspaper in 2019. Rebecca Vardy, the wife of Leicester City striker Jamie, denies the accusations and is suing Miss Rooney for libel. You're now up to date here on GB News. We'll have more as it happens. Now to the briefing with Gloria.
Coming up this hour on The Briefing, the inquiry into the post office scandal begins today. We speak to someone who has first-hand experience of how damaging that episode was. With COVID restrictions set to end in England next week, what does this mean for the clinically vulnerable? We speak to journalist Stephen Pollard, who has leukemia. And we bring you the latest Real Me interview with Labour MP Barry Sheerman, who was first elected in 1979. Give me your political briefing. Send in your views and opinions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. The Prime Minister has been in Scotland today as part of a levelling up tour amid the ongoing Partygate scandal, which has seen the Prime Minister receive a police questionnaire investigating whether he broke his own COVID rules. The SNP's Ian Blackford has described the visit as a farewell tour. Let's take a look at what the Prime Minister said earlier today.
I don't think so. And I think if you look at the attitude of the Scottish Government, it's been fantastic. I think they've really got the point, and they can see the advantages of the free ports. I'm not allowed to give away the locations, but they can genuinely drive huge numbers of jobs and growth. So look, here in Rosyth, we've got a fantastic thing going on with the Type 31 frigate building programme. That's driving 2,500 jobs here in Scotland, and many more can be created with free ports. And by the way, I might say that what I forgot to say earlier on, relevant to Ukraine, as I'm sure you saw earlier on, the minesweepers you were filming earlier on, they are actually going to Ukraine as part of the UK's effort to support that country.
What authority do you have left in Scotland when the bulk of your own MSPs want to see the back of you?
I am working very hard with my colleagues in Scotland on our joint agenda of uniting and levelling up and delivering for the people of the whole UK. And I think we're very proud collectively of what the UK government has done at all levels to get us through COVID very effectively, so that we now have the fastest growing economy in the G7 last year and this year. Plus, we're working together on great projects which we're able to do now, such as the free ports and such as investment in Rosyth.
While Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer was also asked about the Prime Minister's trip to Scotland, he didn't mince his words.
Almost every time the Prime Minister crosses the border into Scotland, he makes the case for the Union harder. We do have a duty to make a strong case for the Union. That's what I've been doing when I go to Scotland, but this Prime Minister does not help that cause.
Well, joining me now is GB News Scotland reporter David Donaldson with the latest on the Prime Minister's visit. Hi there. Seems a long time since we chatted, David. Good to see you. Tell us how that Prime Minister's visit went down in Scotland.
Well, we heard there from the Prime Minister talking about his visit to Rosyth, and that was a shipbuilding company, a frigate building company, and we heard from the Prime Minister that these ships are going to Ukraine as part of the UK government's deal to help the Ukraine. So, yeah, you're talking there about creating 2,500 jobs. That's certainly good news. I'm sure it'll be a welcome trip from getting away from the Partygate scandal, which goes on and on and on. I'm sure he'll be delighted to get away from that and put the focus on something else indeed. However, have you heard from other people? Ian Blackford calling it a farewell tour. It may well be that if the police find the evidence that may be there or not, but that may well be a farewell tour. We've heard from Alex Cole-Hamilton, the Liberal Democrat leader in Scotland. He said instead of coming to Scotland, he should be making the short trip to Buckingham Palace to offer his resignation. So you can see the feeling up here. The other point as well is that Boris Johnson isn't visiting any of the Scottish Conservatives, despite what he said earlier on today, saying he's working well with them. He's not visiting Douglas Ross, the leader of the Scottish Conservative Party, who called for him to resign over the Partygate scandal. So not really coming as a huge surprise, you'd say, but certainly you would think if he was in Scotland that he may have decided to meet up with some members of the Conservative Party, but that hasn't happened. He talked about Ukraine there, we heard some of that. He was supposed to be in Edinburgh, where I am, but so far he's not materialised here. And he's also going to Manchester later as well, down to the northwest, so I would imagine he'd be on his way. But yeah, I mean, he's come here for the day. What difference it will make? Probably not a lot, because certainly the views of people up in Scotland are certainly not the views, or a lot of them are not the views of the Prime Minister. So, and given what's happened recently with the scandal, even less so probably. So yeah, it's a good deflection tactic for the time being, but how long will it last in terms of his leadership? How long is he going to last? Well, that remains to be seen.
David Donaldson, thank you for the update. Thank you. Now, the wrongful convictions of hundreds of sub-postmasters and mistresses will be examined by a public inquiry starting today. Between 2000 and 2014, more than 700 sub-postmasters were wrongly accused of theft, fraud and false accounting due to a flaw in a computer system called Horizon. A total of 72 former sub-postmasters have had their names cleared so far. The cases constitute the most widespread miscarriage of justice in British legal history. Joining me now to discuss this is someone whose family has been deeply impacted by this. Welcome to the programme, Varshas Patel. Hi there.
Hi.
Thank you for your time and thank you for joining me. Your dad was a postmaster. Tell me what happened to him.
So Dad initially was a postmaster in London, in West London, Acton, and he was the manager of a huge Crown Post Office. And then in the year 2000, both Mum and Dad decided to just buy a shop and a small sub-post office. So that's what they did, and they then came to Oxfordshire. Dad was born and bred in Africa, so he always kind of enjoyed the leafy way of life, shall we say. Now, as we came over here, things were great. Mum and Dad were progressing really well. Unfortunately, in 2010, Dad was audited, and Post Office allegedly at that time said that my dad had taken money, and this was to my dad's surprise. And subsequently, after a number of interviews and unfortunately wrongful allegations, they prosecuted Dad. Even though he had even paid the money, they alleged that he had apparently taken. And ever since then, my father's health has deteriorated, both mentally, but I'd say the bigger impact on his health has been the physical impact. Dad is disabled. He walks with 2 crutches. He and literally the decline went from like that. It just went straight down. Dad was more or less bedridden in the months following his prosecution, I believe, and even prior to the prosecution, because there was so much stress on him, literally so much stress. And the last 10 years have been turmoil for both my mother, my father, myself, my sister. We've lost. Well, we had this huge family before, and the family shrunk because people in both the media and wider family thought, my dad was a criminal. So it's had this huge knock-on effect, both financially, socially. We had to endure a lot of shame, stigma. I even suffered depression in my 20s. Me personally, I've even lost friends in Oxfordshire and London. Once the relative people found out, my dad was a criminal, and life just went upside down.
When I was reading about the story about your dad, I was open-mouthed. I just couldn't believe that anybody had been through what you have been through. But many have. How did you get through it? How did you get through a nightmare like the one that you had to suffer?
And that's a really interesting question. I'm happy to answer that. It's actually been my mother. My mother has been the one who has kept the family together. My mother still continues to work 7 days a week to pay the bills. And, even me and my sister, we've tried to help the family, parents as much as we can. But in order to ask your question, like, how do you come through this? I think, from my experience, you have to grow a lot of thick skin, unfortunately. And, there were times where even I felt like giving up. Times where even Dad felt like giving up. My mum felt like giving up. My sister felt like giving up. But, that family spirit truly helps. And you just have to just keep going, because if you don't keep going, you will face the reality of bankruptcy. And that's the story with my family. My dad hasn't been compensated. We still live day by day, and it is truly shocking the way the post office have truly conducted themselves, both in the GLO in the High Court, and even now. It's still keeping its victims in limbo financially. And
sorry, carry on.
It's beggars belief. It really is. It's. I don't. There's a part of me that thinks, are they waiting for my dad to die? He's 68. People have died waiting for compensation. People have died whilst being convicted of fraud, which they clearly didn't do. And people, unfortunately, even commit suicide. Like my dad even said, in the media, the Sunday Times, I believe, and the Oxford Mail, that he contemplated suicide. Just reading that sometimes on the internet, it hurts. It hurts.
What do you want from the public inquiry? What needs to happen to give you some sense of justice?
Well, I believe there's 2 things remaining now. One, everyone who was convicted and who's had their convictions overturned, even the ones who were not convicted but were just dismissed by Post Office, they should be put back right in their entirety financially. And secondly, those who orchestrated this scandal from top down need to face need to face the courts. You know, you can't, in my view, you can't just go around criminalizing over 700 of your own citizens, and no senior management is it's not in the frame for a prosecution over this. Like how does an organization convict over 700 of its own employees and get away with it? I believe Andrew Mitchell MP in Parliament, I believe it was last year, he said something along the lines of, these are the sort of crimes we complain about throughout the world. And the fact that it's happened within our shores is a huge cause of concern.
Varchas Patel, I think you've explained the situation really powerfully and beautifully, and I'm very, very grateful for your time and for bringing a true scandal to life today. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Coming up next, we speak to GB News Home Affairs editor Mark White as tensions between Russia and Ukraine continue to rise. Before that, here is your weather.
Hi there, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Today's rain or showers ease for a time this evening. Clear skies at first overnight before further rain later. The first of several successive areas of rain as the weather turns increasingly stormy. The jet stream picking up areas of low pressure after areas of low pressure. Initially Storm Dudley and then Storm Eunice to bring some damage or even dangerous wind speeds midweek and later this week. But at first this evening, winds are dying around and it looks like there'll be clear spells for a time, a touch of frost in places before the skies cloud over and the next area of rain and breezy weather arrives from the west by the end of the night. That falling with snow above 300 metres for parts of central and northern Scotland. And it'll be a cold start to Tuesday, but most places frost-free because of the cloud, the wind and the rain. Wet across northern and western England, Wales first thing. Then the rain sinks into southern counties of England where it lingers for some time into the afternoon. Brighter skies follow for much of Scotland, Northern Ireland as well as northern England with some showers falling as snow over the hills. Feeling cold in the north. Also feeling unpleasant in the far south with the outbreaks of rain continuing. But for Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia, at least there will be some afternoon drier and brighter interludes. Then another band of rain. Tuesday evening turns up to bring a wet night to many. The far north of Scotland staying clear of that. But for most, it is cloudy, it's damp, and it's increasingly windy across southern parts of the country as we start off Wednesday. Now, with the wind and the rain, it's going to be a mild start to Wednesday, but it will be an increasingly unsettled day, certainly across northern parts of the country. Once the first area of rain's out of the way, another area of rain turns up into the afternoon, and the winds really ramp up by the end of the afternoon into the start of the evening for Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England as well as North Wales. Risk of stormy conditions, risk of disruptive and damaging winds in places.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis and live debate that you need to hear.
Quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that had been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling. Noise is being made here.
Joe Biden walking out.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. on GB News.
Join me, Anaya Falarin Iman, for the discussion every Sunday at 3 p.m. here. From big ideas to questions shaping the public conversation, we tackle the moral, cultural and political implications of news stories.
We need to share this conversation democratically.
It has become so toxic, this debate.
They relish this kind of discourse.
From fascinating guests to challenging ideas, you won't want to miss it. The discussion every Sunday at 3 p.m. here, GB News.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you the briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis, and live debate that you need to hear.
Quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that had been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling. Noise is being made here.
Joe Biden walking out. Thank you very much for joining us. Don't miss it. The briefing with me, Tom Harwood, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. on GB News.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it, Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News. The Prime Minister is holding further talks in the wake of warnings that Russia may invade Ukraine at any moment, with the G7 saying that any military aggression from Russia would be met with a swift, coordinated and forceful response. Defence Committee Chair Tobias Ellwood has warned that the West is lacking a strategy for responding to an invasion. Join me now to discuss all this is GB News' home and security editor, Mark White. What's the latest that our Prime Minister is saying, Mark?
Well, we know this week he was supposed to be on this levelling up visit to the north. He was in Rosyth near Edinburgh today. He has now cut that short and he is heading back to London. He's going to be briefed by intelligence officials before a meeting that is taking place early this evening between Boris Johnson and the US President Biden on the latest on the situation. Now, of course, we know these dire warnings from the US administration just at the weekend. They're talking about Wednesday of this week, very precise language about an invasion from Moscow. I mean, I think what they're talking about is not necessarily that that's the go time, but it's just that the intelligence that they've been able to assess in recent weeks, they've been obviously looking at the positioning of these troops on the ground, not just the military, the ground forces, the tanks, the artillery, but also the naval assets heading into Crimea, the Russian Air Force as well. They have now reached the determination that they have the forces in place in the positions they need them to be able to launch an invasion if they wanted to do. And they believe that it'll be Wednesday when all those assets will be in the optimum position to do that.
And Parliament's in recess at the moment, so MPs aren't sitting. Could we see Parliament recalled, or is COBRA the sort of high-level security meetings? Would that suffice instead of calling Parliament?
It's COBRA for the moment, and we had Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, has just chaired a meeting of COBRA looking at the response of the missions out there in terms of the evacuation of residents in the Ukraine in particular. Of course, there was this warning that was issued by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office to British nationals. Other countries have done the same in Ukraine to leave that country as soon as they possibly can. So looking at the efforts there to assist people with their departure. Tomorrow, we understand that the Prime Minister is going to chair a full meeting of COBRA, looking at the very latest in terms of the intelligence picture and the security picture on the ground. And in addition to that, we've got the Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, who you remember, of course, was in Poland of last week. In fact, he was in Ukraine and then off to Moscow. He is going to be heading out for a meeting of NATO defence chiefs on Wednesday. Tomorrow, we've got the German Chancellor, who is in Kiev today. He's going to be going back out to Moscow this time tomorrow, no doubt to sit at the long end of a very long desk for a meeting with the Russian President, Vladimir Putin. So full diplomatic efforts underway this week to try to steer Russia away from any kind of military intervention. I should say that, throughout this, Russia has insisted it has no intention of invading Ukraine in any way, that these are just military exercises on the border. Believe it if you like. They've been there for months now, 130,000 troops.
Well, Mark, that's what I was going to say to you, because it feels like we've been talking about it for months as well. I suppose this is the million-dollar question, but what is your sense? Are we on the brink of a major conflict? Do you sense that action is imminent?
Well, up until now, I haven't really thought so. It's certainly, as far as Vladimir Putin is concerned, sends a very strong message. You could say it's a coercive move by him to get world leaders round the table. It's absolutely done that. He is the centre of attention now. Everyone wants to speak to him to bring him, as they say, back from the brink. So he's achieved that at the very least. He may have achieved more in terms of sowing some kind of division in terms of NATO and European cohesion. There's also the vexed question, of course, that's exercising Russia so much about Ukraine joining NATO at some point. He may be given private assurances that that ain't going to happen for many years, if ever, and that might be enough for him. That is certainly the hope.
Mark White, thank you very much, as ever. Very comprehensive. Coming up after the break, we'll be discussing the end of COVID curbs in England, and we'll be playing our exclusive interview with Barry Shearman MP. First, it's time for the latest headlines.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 3:30. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. The Prime Minister says the situation in Ukraine is very, very dangerous. Boris Johnson was speaking after the Foreign Secretary warned a Russian invasion could be launched almost immediately. Liz Truss repeated a call for all British citizens to leave Ukraine after chairing a COBRA meeting. The Prime Minister, who's in Scotland, will chair another meeting tomorrow. A sub-postmaster has told a public inquiry that he contemplated suicide after being falsely accused of theft. He was one of more than 700 former employees who were affected by accounting errors caused by flawed software. The discrepancies occurred between 2000 and 2014, which left people in huge debt. Many were jailed. At least 7 people, including 2 children, have been killed in an explosion in southwest France. The country's Interior Minister, Gérald Darmanin, has visited the site in the Pyrenees region, describing the incident as a tragedy. An investigation is underway. The Duchess of Cornwall is self-isolating, having tested positive for coronavirus. It's the first time Camilla has had the infection, catching it just days after the Prince of Wales tested positive for the second time last week. Spokesperson has confirmed Her Royal Highness is triple jabbed. Unvaccinated teenagers can now travel to Spain as long as they have a negative PCR test. The country has reversed its policy, demanding that UK visitors aged between 12 and 17 be double jabbed. The change coincides with the start of half-term, for which many of us it begins today. You're now up to date here on GB News. We're on your TV, online and DAB Plus radio. Shortly, we'll be back to the briefing with Gloria.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Now, all COVID regulations in England, including the requirement to isolate after testing positive, are due to be abolished by the end of the month. As many people will welcome the return back to normal, some, especially those at risk of COVID who have compromised immunity, will be much more apprehensive. Joining me now to discuss this is the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Stephen Pollard. Stephen, we're not interviewing you because you're editor of the Jewish Chronicle, but because of your condition. Explain it, if you would.
Sure. I have a form of leukemia known as CLL. And as a result of that, my immune system doesn't work. So although I've had all the jabs, I actually had my 4th jab last week. Although I've had all the jabs, basically, I'm to be blunt, I might as well not bother, as it were, because for me, they don't work. That's not true for everybody who's got a compromised immune system. Some people, it does have some impact, but I get tested for antibodies 2-3 weeks after the jabs, and they show up as pretty much 0 for me. So what that means is that while everybody else is able to, wonderfully, thanks to the vaccines, is able to go and lead a relatively normal life with or without restrictions, I've effectively been stuck at home for the last 2 years. Not entirely true. I mean, I go outside. I can go to friends' houses if I know that they're safe, if they've had lateral flow tests. Basically, I can't go into public places, which means I can't go into shops. I can't go to restaurants. I can't go to cinemas. I can't go anywhere there's a crowd, basically, where there's a risk. Everybody's different in my situation. Some people, it's about assessing the risk for you. The view that I've taken with my consultant is that I need to be as safe as it's possible for me to be.
And what can the government do to help ensure that you are as safe as you need to be when they lift all restrictions in England?
Yeah. Well, this is the big issue. Now, I've been campaigning on Twitter and various other, through newspapers and so on, for there to be some kind of plan. I mean, the charity Blood Cancer UK has been doing brilliant work on this. The problem is not that the government are lifting the restrictions. I think that's brilliant that COVID is in such a place where we even feel we can contemplate doing that. That's not the issue. The issue is that while they're doing that, there's no plan whatsoever to deal with people like me, other than treatment. Now, the government deserves great praise for the fact that it's bought a series of antiviral pills, thanks to some of the developments. Aside from the vaccine technology, there have been other brilliant medical developments, one of which is people for whom the vaccine doesn't work, if they catch COVID, you can take antiviral pills. There's one called Molnupiravir. There's an even more effective one that Pfizer have come up with, which means that you stand a much better chance when you take those pills of not needing hospitalisation, providing it's done early on. But those are for people who catch COVID. And at the moment, the government's sole response to the kind of points we're making about the fact that we're stuck at home while everyone else is out and about, the government's sole response is to say, yeah, but look, we've got these pills if you get COVID. Well, thank you very much, but I don't want to run the risk of having COVID because they're not 100% safe. They're not 100% guarantee. Fact is, I could catch COVID and the pills might not work for me. They don't work for everyone. What I want is to be able, the great thing about these pills is you can have those pills for prevention. The government's refusing to allow them to be used for prevention. If I was in the States, if I was in Germany, if I was in Israel, I'd have been taking those pills weeks, months ago in some cases, and I'd have been out and about because I'd have had those for prevention rather than treatment.
It sounds like a no-brainer. I hope we speak about this again before those restrictions are finally lifted. Stephen Pollard, I wish we had more time, but thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now it's time for another of my special interviews with MPs where we go behind the politics and get to know the real person. Barry Sheerman talks us through his 43-year career as a parliamentarian. Let's have a look.
Barry Sheerman, you're elected in 1979. You're Labour's longest continuously serving MP. Why have you had enough?
I haven't really. I'm still very vigorous. I'm a social entrepreneur. And of course, I got elected in 79 and faced all those years in opposition. In fact, Jim Callaghan used to call us his lost boys, the people who came in 79, because we had to wait so long to get a Labour government. So, all those years, 18 years in opposition, I became a social enterprise entrepreneur. I started worker co-ops. I actually started those when I was at university in Wales. So I like cooperation, starting things. When I was a kid, I started running jazz concerts and I started a folk club. And, I a kind of interesting history. Went to posh grammar school, Hampton School. It was very posh, and I had to work on a Saturday morning. So when they played sport, so I dropped out at 16, 17, and went into the paint industry. Worked for Eyesight Paints. So 3 or 4 years in industry. And of course that made me, see the world in a very different way, and gave me lots of opportunities because I met a really rather nice girl that I'd been at primary school with. She thought I should get back to education. And a couple of nice guys in the paint factory said you should get an education. So I did A-levels in a year, sold my Lambretta scooter, started a painting and decorating business. When I got to the LSE, I kept it on, and this guy came up to me one day and said, "Hey, you owe good money in the vacation. Can I work with you painting and decorating?" And that was Bob Kilroy Silk.
Gosh.
I keep quiet these days. He was my best man.
Fascinating.
So I've had quite a history of doing stuff before I got into Parliament. So I like doing stuff, getting people together, getting a few people to plot and plan and say, can we really make a difference here? One of the first things I did, I'd been involved in a really bad traffic accident, coming back from my one of my daughter's baptisms. You know, a guy ran into us on the, head on the road back to Swansea from Sunbury-on-Thames, and I never forgot that I was saved by the seatbelts. And so when I got in Parliament, they voted it down 13 times. So I got a private member's bill, my only private member's bill, which banned children from being carried in cars unrestrained. Ken Clarke, the junior transport minister, thought he'd buy me off and said, yeah, I'll amend the bill with that. He thought he'd put me off, and I then finagled a vote on a Lord's amendment on adult seatbelts. And the night before the royal wedding, we kept our troops there, and they didn't. And, you know, I think we saved lots of lives.
So we have you to thank for seatbelts?
Yeah, yeah. I've always kept that interest. People say, why are you interested in road safety? You know, because I now chair global legislators for road safety. It's the biggest killer of children and young people in the world, bigger than any epidemic. So I work for global road safety with the World Bank. I chair global legislators for road safety with the WHO. And, you know, it's once I get a campaign, I put it on the back burner if it's ticking over nicely, and then I take the next one. I help lead the campaign for the ban on public smoking in public places. You know, largely around children. I'm pretty obsessed with children. You know, I have 3 daughters, a son, 12 grandchildren, and what got me into politics really is. Everything that happened to me was wonderful. You know, I got to the London School of Economics. I did well. I did postgraduate. I became a young university teacher. Finished up head of American Studies at Swansea University. Everything was perfect, and then our first baby died at birth. And you know, sometimes those dreadful blows give you something to reflect on your life. Do you want to do this? And I thought to myself, and very often in that situation, the man is the strong partner, if there any decency at all. But after that, when we really come to the worst, looking back, I was in some depression. You know, I had no energy. My wife was worried about me, conned me into going to the university doctor, who gave me a total check and said, nothing wrong with you, Barry, but a man that loses a child, as well as a woman, goes through something like this. And you know, it was both a crushing blow, but, you know, I don't want to teach politics and economics anymore. I want to do it. I want to change the world. So that's how so that's why I've loved doing the job.
Gosh, I had no idea. I'm so sorry to hear about that.
But a year after we lost our first little baby, we had a healthy daughter, and then, you know, all these children.
All these children. All these children. When I was preparing for this, I just thought, my goodness, you have seen so much of our politics being elected in 1979. And I just was really interested in getting your perspective on how things have changed. So let me start by asking you, how have MPs changed in the 41 years that you have been in Parliament? I'm talking about, I suppose, class, gender, ethnicity.
Yeah. Well, so much of the intake into politics has changed, and for the better. You know, obviously more women, more diversity generally. Still a large number of quite posh people, white men. I worry sometimes about a lot of people that were coming into politics in those days. When I was first there were people like Dennis Healey, who stood on the beaches, you know, when we took back Europe. He'd stood as a beach captain, you know, and the major, but, you know, in charge of, Dennis Healey. And people that had been, you know, in the war. Harold Wilson, I mean, was one of the guys that running the war effort behind the scenes. You know, the cleverest man Oxford had ever seen, the youngest professor ever in Oxford. And here was this young guy from Huddersfield, but, you know, he did that in the war. By the time he got into Parliament, you know, Quite extraordinary that, you know, some sort of really giants of men. Callaghan, all that experience Callaghan had had in the Navy and all those jobs he'd done. So there were a lot of people with very senior experience, but also experience of what happens when, you know, ghastly regimes of the left or right got into power and, you know, misused it as they did, of course, we knew across Europe. And I was so lucky because when I was at the LSE, all my tutors were the big players, you know, really serious people. And one of the things that inspired me, I was taught by Michael Oakeshott, you know, this Cambridge professor who'd said, you know, it's wonderful with rationalism in politics, that, you know, the danger to democracy was from extremism on the left, extremism on the right. The human beings did best by edging forward cautiously, and he called it the pursuit of intimations. And I've always loved that.
By implication, do you think there's too many members of the political class? We know who we're talking about, people who go to university, work for one of the parties as researchers or press officers, basically never had a real job. There
is an imbalance. I think a lot of people now are, you know, would think, do I really want to go into Parliament? And of course, things have changed in terms of social media and the exposure you get and the unpleasantness you get and the threats, and you know, it's a quite a tough job. And you know, David Amess was a good friend of mine, a great parliamentarian, a lovely man. My next door neighbour was Jo Cox, and she was a family friend as well, close friend of my daughter. And you know, it has become quite a worry about, you know, MPs' security, the amount of abuse they get. You know, there was a higher level of respect for the job of politician and parliamentarian when I first came in.
I suppose, I'm not questioning your history, but I suppose that also there was the Brighton bomb, you know, where, you know, Margaret Thatcher, frankly, was nearly murdered.
Yeah.
Norman Tebbett's wife.
Yeah. Well.
So is the threat to MPs, has it changed? Is it more commonplace? Whereas it's not just, you know, members of the government now. It's just all of you are sort of fair game.
Yeah, I think it's more a fair game for more people. I mean, I lived through the Irish terrorism period. You know, I was Roy Hattersley's deputy on the front bench, dealing with, you know, the Guildford Four and the Birmingham Six and all that. And of course, we lived in, you know, where special conference had to be in London one year, and every pub was wire netted, and you know, the height of the IRA, you know, as you know, MPs were killed.
Yeah.
A restaurant I regularly went to just across the road from Parliament, a bomb was placed there and killed MPs who were in that restaurant. So we all knew a much higher level of. I used to go to the United States and see their laxness of their, you know, in government buildings, and we, of course, with terrorism, had learnt to live with it, and it became part of the. You know, you'd accept that as part of the. It's a different threat today. It's a different threat. There is more sort of a randomness about it.
Yeah, that's a good way of describing it. So you enter Parliament to the first woman Prime Minister this country has ever had. Did politicians treat her like differently because she was a woman?
Yeah, I think they did. She was a phenomenon. You know, I liked Margaret Thatcher. I got on well with Margaret Thatcher. And, you know, you build a relationship. She knew that if I like question time. I can remember she suffered from what sometimes you notice some people that, you know, if they are under pressure, they have a kind of a pink sort of glow coming up. And if you got her, you would see it. You actually couldn't disguise it. And I got her once on Prime Minister's Question Time, and she joked about it afterwards. She said, "You really got me there, Barry." But yeah, she was. You know, I didn't agree with her principles, but she was a phenomenal woman. and you have to watch her in operation, and the way in which she took over the Conservative Party, which is not the most female-friendly organisation in the world. There she was, and that wonderful rivalry between her and Ted Heath, who always used to stand in the same position and would stand up, and you knew that hostility and between the two of them, because she dumped him.
Is she the most phenomenal Prime Minister that you have witnessed in your time in Parliament?
Well, Harold Wilson was before my time, although I knew Harold.
During your time in Parliament?
Well, because I was from Huddersfield, I knew Harold at the end, but he was, he was not the man he used to be. Yes, she was the most phenomenal. I spoke at her when she died. I spoke in Parliament about her, and a lot of people thought what I said about her was very thoughtful. And I was invited to her funeral in St Paul's, which was a nice thing to happen. And I genuinely said, this was one you could disagree with, but my goodness, she knew what being Prime Minister was.
How has the job changed? By which I mean, I read that there weren't constituency surgeries in 1979 when you'd have got elected. That is that right?
There was some very old-fashioned practice. When I was a young MP, I went into the post office, and there was a very famous Welsh, long-serving Welsh MP throwing all his mail into a waste paper basket. I said, "What are you doing?" I opened. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I never answer letters. It only encourages them." And I mean, he wasn't typical. He wasn't typical. But there was a different feeling. And also a more traditional attitude to what an MP does. When I was a social scientist, I got in, I looked at this prosperous Huddersfield manufacturing town, And because I was an economist, I could see manufacturing employment was going to plunge, that all sorts of things that have brought wealth and excellence to that famous town were going to go. And what was I going to do about good jobs, new jobs, make something happen?
So when did constituency surgery start?
I think they were always there.
Yeah.
They were, I remember when I lived in Wales, my local Labour MP had one every 2 months.
Yeah.
Very, very reverential.
Yeah.
Very difficult to see the MP, such busy people.
Yeah.
Whereas now, I'm an odd one because I tweet a lot. I tweet in the morning. I start with Farming Today, and the people that follow me say, "Barry, where were you if I haven't commented in Farming Today and the Today programme?"
And just finally on our history lesson. So just on the Labour Party. So you obviously were there during Jeremy Corbyn when the Labour Party was in civil war. I can testify that, but I think it's pretty much common knowledge. But also during the militant, when the Labour Party was in a civil war in the late 70s, in fact...
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I was at a meeting recently of Labour MPs, and someone said, of course, when Tony Blair got in, he sorted militant out. And I said, really? Really? I was there. And it was Roy Hattersley, Gerald Kaufman. It was a whole band of us, working together. John Smith, and the hammer of the left, our friend from the trade union movement, that knew every move they had and counter. We had a team that was formidable. And when I said, look, when we sorted militant out that first time, we knew that when we started Solidarity and took them on, that you could take no hostages. You had to do it because you were a democratic socialist party, and these people weren't democratic socialists. They believe in the Trotskyist entryism, getting into a democratic party and taking it in from the inside. I've always hated that. I've always got on well with people from the Communist Party because they had their own party and their own agenda, and you knew what that agenda was. But the Trots, as a democratic socialist, no, we chucked the Marxist wing of the party out in 1890, And there was part of my mission was always to keep us. I'm a Christian socialist. I'm a Fabian. I'm right there, You know, and I can remember the wonderful days when you'd go to your constituency party on a Friday night and there'd be a warm glow because everybody there believed in Labour, wanted to work together, enjoy life together, and, you know, it was fun to do. I hated it when people came in and said this is only about resolutions and whether we're going to have a, you know, the perfect left-wing policies tomorrow.
Yeah. What will you miss most when you stand down?
The ability to raise issues, you know, to do what I do. That's what I miss, the ability to say there's a wrong out there and we're going to put it right and we can do it, working together.
Very final question, one word answer. The tea room. I miss that. It's great caff. Only MPs can use it. What's your favourite dish in the MP's tea room?
My favourite dish?
Yeah.
Scrambled eggs.
OK, Barry Shearman, Parliament's going to miss you. Thank you for sharing with us what you have seen over 41 years in Parliament.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
You have been watching The Briefing with me, Gloria DePiero. I'll be back tomorrow at noon. Up next, it's Colin Brazier.
Hi there, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Today's rain or showers ease for a time this evening. Clear skies at first overnight before further rain later. The first of several successive areas of rain as the weather turns increasingly stormy. The jet stream picking up areas of low pressure after areas of low pressure. Initially Storm Dudley and then Storm Eunice to bring some damage or even dangerous wind speeds midweek and later this week. But at first this evening,